Today, I want to talk about domain names. Let's go. All right, well, let's talk about domain names. Domain names are, on one hand, a pretty simple concept. On the other hand, actually managing one gets a little complicated. And I just want to give you a foundational concept in order that you can use it and use it effectively with AI. And if you're thinking about this right, I think you can make it pretty easy on yourself. First of all, what is a domain name? Okay, it is the web address that people will type into their browser in order to get to your web page. All right, so like google.com is a domain name. My church, svrbc.org, the domain name. Very simple. Now, you might already be familiar with that, but just a few things. This is not the same thing as the registrar where you register it. The hosting and the email can all be separate things. A lot of people will make the mistake of thinking, oh, okay, well, I got my domain name through GoDaddy, therefore I have to get hosting through GoDaddy. No, that is not how it works. All these things are separate and you should be thinking about them separately. So in these previous videos, I've been doing hosting with Vercel, and I haven't even talked about email. So you should not be thinking that just because you used one product to register the domain that you should use that product for hosting or for email or for anything. In fact, usually it's not a good idea. Continuing on. The prices for these different things. Let me get my face out of the way here so you can see that. So what do prices look like? I would recommend using .org for your domain name. Once you start getting into more clever things like .church, it tends to be harder for people to find because they're not used to thinking that way. And then when you get to more clever things like .ai and stuff like that, it gets a lot more expensive. Each of these is held by a different registry and they can charge whatever prices they want. So for these traditional ones, you've got reasonable prices. So that's what you can expect to pay. You might have a new website that you want to build that wouldn't be on your main website. And so that is what you can expect to spend. This is per year, something like that. All right. So if you keep going here, subdomains are free. You should be thinking about subdomains. Our church has a number of subdomains. Recently on the site, I built salter.svrbc.org. I have a few others. I think one brother in the church was trying to organize recipes for the different fellowship meals, and so he created recipes.svrbc.org. You can have lots of subdomains that you want off your main site, but still, you don't want to purchase a new domain name for every little project you do. Just make it a subdomain. It's free. Okay, now you're probably wondering, how do I do that? I'll explain in a minute, because you don't really need to know. You just need to know the concept. And that's really what I'm trying to get at in a lot of these videos. If you have the concept, you really have enough. You just have to know the right thing to ask for or to say. Okay, so you want to go to an AI-friendly registrar. Let me get my face off of here again. There are a number of these registrars. There's GoDaddy. You're probably familiar with that. A lot of people know that because they've done a lot of advertising. I've mentioned in these videos Pork Bun. I've also mentioned Gandhi, which would probably go in the gated tier. Maybe that would be in the free API tier or something. Free API here, meaning just that it's free from any kind of restrictions, not necessarily that it's that it costs money. So the situation you have here is that some of these registrars might be more user-friendly for an average user to go in and see it. The Squarespace one, very user-friendly. But there's only domain name registrar can only be so user-friendly. At a certain point, you still have to put in your CNAME record and your A record, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to worry about what those are. But the point is, you don't need to be thinking about what is the most end user friendly registrar. I think it would be good if you were thinking about what is the most AI friendly registrar. And you can find that out just by asking Claude or asking whatever your AI is. What is going to give me the best access? What is going to be the easiest to work with? Have an API that I can hit. I've used that term API a number of times. We'll have to do a video on that too at some point, one of these foundational concepts videos. Anyway, Pork Bun, Cloudflare, those are going to be good options. There might be others out there. Just go for something where in the future you will be able to say, go ahead and make a subdomain that points to this website, etc. And it will be able to do that. You want to pick one of these AI friendly registrars so that you don't need to navigate Squarespace or anything. So once again, don't be thinking about human friendly. Think about AI friendly. And in the end, that is more human friendly. All right, I hope this was helpful.